Do you have a loved one about to be discharged from the hospital or a rehab facility and you're wondering what now? Having a plan in place is vitally important to make sure your loved one doesn't get readmitted back into the hospital or the rehab facility. And so we're going to go over a few things to think about and proactively do to just make sure that doesn't happen. I'm Greg Eldridge with Home Helpers of Alpharetta, and let's talk about hospital and rehab discharges. So a hospital discharge often is like right now. You might get a notification from the discharge planner at the hospital as, hey, your mom's going to be discharged later today or tomorrow. And a lot of times that's not their fault. They just get the notification from the insurance company that, hey, Mrs. Smith's got to go home, and they're communicating that with you. So that can be add a tremendous amount of anxiety and, what do I do now? Because it's really happening right now. Rehabs, on the other hand, typically have quite a bit more time. If your loved one is in a rehab, often once they're admitted, they might have a 2 or 3 week therapy time. And as long as they're making progress, they'll complete that time, and you'll know often a week in advance what that discharge date is going to be. So it gives you a little bit more time to put the kind of stuff we're going to talk about in place. So one of the first things you'll want to focus on is equipment and supplies. And, a lot of times are helping families where a loved one has been in the hospital or rehab and they come home, and it represents a significant change in how they're able to proceed living their life. If someone has had a bad fall, they might start to need assisted devices like canes or walkers, or if it's really bad, might even need a Hoyer lift, where before they were walking just fine. And obviously the goal is to get them back to that place where they were before the hospital or rehab. But dealing in the now, we need to make sure the assisted devices are there that are appropriate for whatever their level of ability is. And that can include things like a hospital bed. If they're having a hospital bed, can be very, very helpful to help with their care. The head can get raised, the foot can get raised, the whole bed can be raised and lowered to just help getting them in and out of the bed. Hoyer lifts are a very helpful device for someone that is not able to transfer themselves at all and can't even assist with it. So, we work with a lot of clients that are using Hoyer lifts, and obviously the caregiver that is there with them needs to understand how to use a Hoyer lift, or family members, if the family member is the caregiver, need to get up to speed on that. And it's not difficult. You just need to know how to do it. Things like grab bars in bathrooms. There comes a point at which your loved one really needs to have a grab bar to be able to get off and on the toilet or in and out of the bathtub. And, they just need that little extra security. Make sure they're not falling in the bathroom, because the bathroom is a very dangerous place to fall. Ramps coming in and out of the house. If they're in a wheelchair, having a way to transition that wheelchair into the house easily and out of the house is super important. And then personal hygiene type stuff, gloves, adult diapers, kind of protective sheets you can put over the bed in case there are any accidents at night. So, the bed itself doesn't get soiled, but you can just, the draw sheets, things like that. A monitor can be super helpful. And this is just basically like a baby monitor. So you have a monitor in with your loved ones so you can hear during the night if something's going on, if they need some help. You obviously want them to call for assistance, not try to do stuff themselves. And then another super important thing is medication organizers. Having whatever they're supposed to take very clearly laid out in organizers, however many times a day they're taking medication. Make sure you have an organizer that comprehends everything that they're supposed to be taking and is easily you're able to easily follow kind of what you're supposed to be taking or what they're supposed to be taking. And the second thing to really focus on is a support team of some sort, whether it's family members, community, church, private caregivers that you hire, just making sure that your loved one has the support that they need to be able to navigate their day. Because again, often when they come out of the hospital, it's kind of a brave new world, right? the condition that they were in before the hospital often is very different now. Often we help clients that are, they've been in the hospital for a couple weeks and have been in rehab for a couple weeks. So it's been, 4 to 6 weeks since they've been home, and their level of ability is drastically different often. And that's even for folks that will fully recover. It's just that initial welcoming your loved one home. You really want to make sure that you have the support that they need to be able to do everything they need to do throughout the day, and all their care needs are addressed. So a super important thing to do is just to have kind of a lead person to kind of be the point person for the various care decisions that come down the pike. So, as talking about intimate care, if your loved one is there's some level of incontinence, how to handle that, who's going to do that, and who's comfortable doing that. Is your loved one comfortable doing that? Is there someone that they would be most comfortable with handling that kind of intimate care? Things like bathing, dressing, personal hygiene. Like a father might not want his whatever daughter or son to do that intimate care, and so you just need to be sensitive about what their feelings are, because it's very uncomfortable. We have a lot of families that we help with care that, they want the lines between family and caregiver to be very clear and distinct. And so just be aware of that sensitivity, because it's a real thing. And also caregiver burnout is a real thing. So whoever is going to be that kind of point person for coordinating everything, and also whoever is actually going to be providing that intimate care over the course of weeks and months, it can take a toll, and they just sometimes need a break. And that's some of what we do, is providing respite care for family members that are the primary caregivers, because it's a sad reality that a lot of the primary family caregiver ends up in worse physical shape than the person they're caring for. It's a very intense endeavor. And then, have some checklists about various things that you're wanting to stay on top of. Medication is a huge deal. Other players that are going to be helping your loved one, whether it's a home care company like us or a home health company. And we have a separate video that will go through the differences of that, or a hospice company. And, who's going to be there when stuff gets delivered? Because often when your loved one is discharged from the hospital or rehab, the discharge planner will arrange for a hospital bed to be delivered, or assistive devices like a wheelchair or a walker or things like that. And you just need to coordinate those deliveries. If you belong to a church community, that can be a really good community to find folks that will be there to support your loved one. So all of those resources can be very, very helpful. You'll want to be very careful about overtaxing those resources, though, right? I mean, if you have a friend or a neighbor that, hey, I'll do anything, you want to not push that envelope to the limit, because at some point they're going to reach their limit. So, just be aware of that, and just judiciously ask those for help, that you're not overtaxing them. So the third thing to focus on is getting a care team in place. Now, what we have found over the years with anyone going through a hospitalization, as I had mentioned earlier, there typically is a pretty significant physical change from when they went into the hospital, or kind of the condition they were in before they went into the hospital, to when they come home. Someone that's been in the hospital for 2 weeks and then in a rehab for 2 or 3 weeks, it's been a chunk of time since they've been home. And with an older loved one, spending a lot of time laying down in a hospital bed or in the rehab facility, you just get weaker. And so what we have found to be very, very helpful in that initial probably 48 to 72 hours is that someone is there round the clock with your loved one, whether that's family members, just to make sure that they're sleeping well through the night. And, if they start sleeping well through the night and everything's good, then you can relax a little bit at night. But, the worst thing is to have someone who's been in the hospital and they're home and they're relaxed, and they try to get out of bed in the middle of the night and they fall and hurt themselves, or they just do something where it's just dangerous. So having that oversight at night is hugely important in those first few days. And that's where that baby monitor I mentioned earlier can come into play. You can just have that there in the room, make sure that they're on board with calling out for help as opposed to trying to do stuff themselves. And then as time goes on, you can kind of assess how their needs may be changing. Are they recovering well? Are they have they plateaued? Are hopefully not getting worse, but getting better? And you can adjust those care needs appropriately. But that first 48 to 72 hours, having something round the clock is really, really important. We do that all the time with clients that we're working with that are coming out of a hospital and or rehab situation, just to make sure they're transitioning home safely. Home health, if they have been prescribed home health, it'll take several days for them to come out to do the assessment, and then probably another day or two after that for the treatment that they have been prescribed to deliver actually starts to be delivered. Hospice, depending on the situation, will be a similar timeline, probably a little bit quicker than home health. And we have a video that we go into some detail about home health and hospice as it relates to home care. So check that out when it's available. And then home care, like what we do, that can be, a few hours a day to give the family some respite, or round the clock to kind of do all the heavy lifting while recovery is happening. If you're facing a hospital or rehab discharge and would like a checklist to kind of go through everything I've just outlined, please email us at alpharetta@homehelpershomecare.com, and we'll be happy to send you that checklist. If you have any other questions or interest, visit our website at homehelpershomecare.com/Alpharetta, and we look forward to hearing from you.